Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We are back with another episode of Daily Palantir. On today's episode, we're going to be focusing on three main things. Number one, a $10 price target by CitiBank. Yesterday, I showed you a $21 price target by Bank of America. Today, I'm going to give you the opposite perspective about why Palantir is overvalued and why Citi continues to have a sell rating on the stock. Number two, we're going to be looking at Dan Ives calling Palantir the golden child of AI and analyzing a little bit more why he feels like this, along with another clip around what's going on with the NHS and someone in the UK at their version of Congress basically speaking about why Palantir shouldn't get this deal. We're going to listen to a little clip on that. And then finally, for the last 10 minutes of the show, we're going to be analyzing Hirsch Jain. I'm getting Rishi, the RBC analyst, confused with Hirsch. Hirsch Jain, who works at Palantir and is basically explaining why Palantir is developing one of the most significant moats in the healthcare industry that exists. He had a 9-minute talk at a conference. We're going to be analyzing what he said about Palantir, why Palantir is thriving in regards to AI, data, and healthcare, and ultimately why the trajectory for healthcare is very big for Palantir. Without further ado, let's get into it. The reason I confused Hirsch Jain with Rishi is because someone tweeted or someone commented below in one of the YouTube videos from yesterday, how does this Rishi guy still have his job if he's an analyst and he's saying Palantir should be $5 and Palantir's at like $18? And it's like, it's funny because I was just like, yeah, that's kind of true. I guess the analysts, they don't really get paid to be right. They get paid to create a narrative, and that's how they end up making their money. But yeah, Rishi is a very interesting fellow. All right, let's get started with our first part of today's show, which is $5 above Rishi's price target, which is $10 from CitiBank. So CitiBank, Tyler Radke, this guy has not liked Palantir for a long time. If you've been following the channel or if you know anything about Palantir since 2022, around January, Tyler came out and basically said, look, we think the SPACs are a scam. We think Palantir is buying revenue. We think, this company is grossly overvalued, yada, yada, yada. He said all of this. The stock's up almost 200%. And really his main concern was this idea around how they engage with SPACs. What they're doing with SPACs is no different than what a lot of other companies do with, quote, like buying back their shares and financially engineering their EPS. So, it was always weird that was his biggest concern, but still he has not increased his price target from $10. So let's read through the report a little bit. And again, this is from Palantir Chad, awesome Twitter account. Thank you to him for posting this. Radke says Palantir's revenue was largely in line with expectations, primarily driven by strong commercial performance, which offsets slightly weaker government revenue impacted by a government shutdown during the quarter, which makes sense. Government shutdown, can't get that many government deals. U.S. commercial growing 33% year over year. So strong commercial performance was very good. He also noted that profitability exceeded expectations, but key booking metrics continued to weaken despite better AIP momentum and record customer onboarding from new go-to-market strategies and boot camps. That to me is not that big of a deal because that just means you're getting a lot of the more customers in the door, probably giving them stuff for free, but you're not necessarily booking any revenue or any potential revenue from them because you don't know if they want AIP yet. But the fact that you're getting them to adopt your platform, and eventually we think, that if it's a sticky platform, they'll continue to use it, you'll eventually get those bookings, then it's not that big of a deal. So I don't think that's necessarily bad. What would be bad is if boot camps and customer growth wasn't working in AIP, and it seems like that is from everything we're seeing. So that to me matters a little bit more than the bookings metric. The report notes that while the strength of Palantir's U.S. commercial business is significant, the substantial quarter-over-quarter growth may not truly be operational or sustainable, as the third quarter typically experiences the strongest quarter-over-quarter growth during the year. So Tyler says, we remain on the sidelines as we await further clarification around AIP product and monetization momentum that remains in its early days. This part is actually interesting. I can't really get mad at CitiBank for saying this. Third quarter for software companies tends to be the best, third and fourth quarter, quite frankly, because that's when deals get done, that's when pilots are completed, and that's when companies decide, all right, you know what, for the next year, if 2024 we need an AI strategy, let's just end up going with Palantir, right? That's this stuff kind of happens towards the end of the year. So I get the argument for why it might feel like it's not sustainable quarter over quarter, but nonetheless, the growth 33% year over year is just phenomenal. And so yes, we will see in the future if that growth can continue, but if AIP is working, boot camps are working. Palantir is doing 70 boot camps in 1 month, more than they did all of next year, and they're scaling their boot camps every single month. Karp on the earnings call says the question is not, can we do more boot camps? The question is, do we have enough dollars, or not do we have enough dollars to invest in boot camps? Do we have enough people that we can put in these boot camps? Because that's what makes the boot camps magical. When you have a forward deployed engineer literally build you a product with your data on one of Palantir's AIP terminals to the point where you can take it, leave with it for free, and actually use it. You need a lot of people to be able to do that, right? You need a lot of coordination. And so if that just keeps scaling and they figure that out, then I don't know if the growth really is as unsustainable as CitiBank is claiming it to be. They further say, with Palantir shares surging over 20% following the earnings report, now basically 30%, and trading at 17 times the forward 24 sales, CitiBank believes there are cleaner stories with more tangible generative AI tailwinds. Radke highlights MongoDB and Snowflake for companies that have better tailwinds than Palantir. Look, at the end of the day, I'm not necessarily going to say he has the worst argument. I understand his argument about growth still being at 17%. It's not 30%. I understand his argument about growth potentially not being sustainable quarter over quarter. I also understand the argument that the valuation at $40 billion, given Palantir has only done $72 million of net income, these companies, in my opinion, always are going to be quote unquote overvalued. So it's not something to get super, scared about. But yeah, the valuation is getting up there. So that makes sense. And so from a pure valuation perspective, I think the report has some logic to it, has some basis to it in terms of why you could have a sell rating. The problem is the price that he wants it at is $10, which would be a $20 billion market cap. If you look at Datadog yesterday, Datadog went up 30%. They're at a $32 billion market cap because they had an amazing earnings. Datadog has a crap ton of debt, ridiculous amount of stock-based compensation. They're up 30%. Snowflake is up 11% on the fact that Datadog is up 30%. Snowflake now $51 billion market cap, Datadog $32 billion market cap. I mean, where do you put Palantir that has stock-based compensation that is 22% of revenues, which is in line with most of the SaaS industries? Snowflake having 42% of stock-based compensation as a percentage of revenues. At some level, you have to ask yourself, okay, maybe 19, 20 bucks is a lot for Palantir right now, given, the growth is still not phenomenal and profitability is there, but it's not like really, really there, right? A lot of it is net interest income. But at what point are you willing to give the market cap just a stupid valuation? And I feel like $10 is more of a stupid valuation than something that's more fair value, which is 14 to 15, in my opinion, which is the price I would be looking at to buy again. So, look, it's a decent report in the context of the fact that, yeah, the valuation might be getting up there, but the idea that it deserves a $10 price is just silly to me. Like, it does not deserve a $10 price, especially not in this market, especially them being 4 quarters of GAAP profitability within these macroeconomic interest rates. I mean, you can't tell me that a company like Palantir deserves to be only worth $20 billion after doing that. On top of that, if you recommend MongoDB and Snowflake, I don't know that much about MongoDB, but Snowflake at $50 billion is not a better buy, in my opinion, if you're looking for capital appreciation and shareholder returns, than Palantir. When it gets down to 14, 15, I like that a little bit better. But buying it at 50 billion for Snowflake, even though, yeah, their growth is way better than Palantir, Snowflake's not even profitable yet. They can become profitable whenever they want, but they're not profitable yet. And yeah, they're growing really nicely. But then it comes down to a question of, okay, if you're willing to pay that 50 billion, what the hell are you paying for? And if you're paying for a data lakehouse versus an entire operating system for an enterprise via Palantir, it comes down to what is actually a moat. And I don't think a lot of these software companies have a moat. I think Palantir is one of the only companies in the world that has a moat. A lot of tech companies don't have a moat. Palantir is one of those tech companies that has a moat. We can see it in all the patents they get every single day. And so to me, $10 is a bit ridiculous for a price for that. All right, next thing I want to talk about is 2 clips. There are 2 1-minute clips that I want to discuss just to bring to your guys' attention to keep you updated on it. And then we'll go from there. Here is David Davis speaking about the NHS contract earlier today in the UK Parliament. Another video from Palantir Chad. He is a conservative. This was at the UK Parliament. They were debating this FDP contract from the NHS. Let's get an update and see what some of the people in the UK think about Palantir.
They're doing it again this time because the contract's gone out. It looks likely that the company that's going to win this is a company called Palantir. Those of you who don't know Palantir, it, I think, started with an investment from the CIA. It's actually largely, its history is in the National Security Agency support in America, and bluntly, it's just the wrong company to put in charge of our precious data resource. Even if it behaved perfectly, nobody would trust it. And the thing that destroyed the last 2 attempts will destroy this, which is people will not sign up and not join up. So the health service has got to get its act together on this, because if it does, we can do things like have a complete nationwide DNA database. If the privacy is protected, if the privacy is not protected, it won't happen. So there's an opportunity there, and it should grasp it, not drop it, in terms of what comes next.
Okay, so this clip is hard to watch as a Palantir shareholder for a couple of reasons. So just want to bring them up. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. But it's really hard, man, when you are right about something and you're just trying to get the other side to see it, but ideology and dogmatism is what stops them from really being able to understand what you're trying to say or what you're trying to do. Look, when he says this is a company that was started and funded by the CIA, and as a result of that makes the presupposition that this company is an evil company, that's the undertone of his voice, that's going to spy on you and steal your data, and that we could have a national database in the UK, but privacy, I like how he said privacy, though. Privacy, I love the UK accent, is the only way for that to happen. And he doesn't acknowledge that Palantir's entire origins is around civil liberties, around protection of the state, around protection of data, around non-manipulation of selling your data to advertisers like Facebook, Amazon, Google. Like, it's just incredible that Palantir is the company, because of Thiel supporting Donald Trump and them getting an investment by the CIA, which we should be very grateful we had a CIA in the United States in 2003 that was willing to fund startups. I mean, like, how many countries around the world have the government that is actually able to give money to support innovation, and for that to be able to change the trajectory of that country? Like, those two things are not reasons for why the UK public should be so scared of Palantir. I understand on a surface level why that can be scary. I mean, when I found out about Palantir in the press, I was like, should I invest in these guys? It looks kind of scary. But if you just do a little bit of research, just a little bit, and after 2,000 videos, I've done a little bit of research, you start to recognize this is silly. I mean, this is absolutely silly. This is a company that cares the most about protections of data. This is a company that's not selling your data. This is a company that can't make money off of data. I mean, this idea that, he said, we are not going to let Palantir have the precious data of the UK. Dude, your data is not precious unless it's useful. That data sitting in an Excel sheet that's not making the NHS productive, that's not reducing backlogs or wait times, means it's unproductive. No one cares about it. That data is not being used in a way, formulated in a way that actually creates business intelligence and results. Palantir has software that is able to do that better than every other company in the world, in my opinion. And so it's sad to see that. And I think Palantir will still get the deal, but his point about people not trusting the company, therefore they won't opt in, is a legitimate concern. I think the NHS is trying to figure out how do they advertise Palantir to the UK public so that they do opt in. And I think the best way to convince the UK public is saying, hey, we're going to reduce backlogs and wait times so that you're going to actually have proper healthcare. And if they can do that effectively, then maybe, just maybe, Palantir can secure this deal. Another clip I want to show you guys is Dan Ives. So here's 30 seconds of Dan Ives on Bloomberg this morning, speaking a little bit more about Palantir.
Just picking up on Palantir, the Messi of AI. Why are they the Messi of AI?
Because I believe they are the purest play AI name in the market, period. And look, Palantir is one where, many have been negative on that story for a number of different reasons. But I think what you're seeing now happen is that they've actually parlayed enterprise success, and you're now seeing the use cases explode. I believe Palantir in 25 is our base case, but that is the golden child of AI. I'm going to make some news.
Sorry if the volume was a little low. I'll try to fix that in post to make sure you guys can hear all of it. But it was 30 seconds. Basically, he's saying people have been nervous about the name, but we're seeing all the new use cases of Palantir in regards to AI. And he says, as a result of all these diversified use cases and what they've been able to show in Q3 earnings, they're the golden child of AI. Look, it's funny, he called them the Messi of AI. He has a lot of different names. Dan Ives is really good at branding. It's funny because every time Dan Ives talks about we're in this AI revolution, he never mentions anything technical about AI. He never goes a little bit more deeper about why it's an AI revolution. He's just really good at branding that it's an AI revolution. The reason I think Dan Ives is correct is because AI increases productivity and revenue per employee in an enterprise. And when you're increasing revenue per employee, you're decreasing costs, you're increasing top line revenue, you're becoming more productive, you're expanding and democratizing the capacity for people to engage in an ecosystem. We saw what ChatGPT did yesterday with unveiling the GPT App Store. Anyone can become a quote unquote developer. Giving more opportunity to people allows them to participate in a booming economy, which is what AI is doing. And that's exactly what AIP is doing. That's exactly what large language models are doing. Palantir is just taking that entire approach for the enterprise versus the consumer. And if they can really take that approach to the enterprise, this can get very big very quickly. This is just a question of execution, but there is no doubt in my mind, having studied AI really for the past 9 months and trying to understand, is there a business use case to this, that if they make an enterprise more effective, that enterprise will pay millions of dollars because they can afford to pay millions of dollars to become more effective if they're enabling themselves through AI. And that's what Palantir is going to do, and that's why I think Dan Ives is bullish on the name. All right, last thing we're going to do is look at Harsh Jain, who is one of the, let's just see him here. Here's his Twitter, head of public health at Palantir. Let me give him a follow because might as well follow him. Head of public health at Palantir Tech. Here he is talking at this conference. It's the Future of Health Summit for 9 minutes around Palantir's role and where healthcare is going. It's 9 minutes. I think it's important for every Palantir shareholder to understand, particularly because healthcare is a big vertical for Palantir. They're powering 16% of hospital beds in the United States, Cleveland Clinic, Tampa Bay General Hospital, the NHS contract. Healthcare is a very big vertical for Palantir. So I've never heard from this guy before. It'll be interesting to see how he talks. This is the first time I'm listening to it as well. So here's 9 minutes, and I'll be chiming in here and there of Harsh Jain speaking about Palantir and its role in healthcare.
I'm going to ask him the hardest question. Harsh, Palantir has worked with all the health agencies to aggregate data that previously was really hard to gather, to give a picture from above in a way you can visualize the environment that we're all in, and whether it's COVID, whether it's cancer incidences, whether it's pollution and cancer incidences mapped on each other. So number one, how do you find all of that data in a discombobulated, often very parochial data environment in the healthcare system? And secondly, knowing where we are is great, but how do you use it to know where we're going to go? And how does that affect your view of the future of healthcare?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think it's worth maybe the brief origin story of Palantir here, which is the fundamental principles with which Palantir was started was that there's this age-old view that privacy and security need to be traded off with one another. And that, I think, particularly was in a national security context where, in a post 9/11 world, we really needed software to help bridge the gap and both protect the data of the citizens of the United States and also provide the infrastructure to help us get ahead of and address potential threats to the country. That ultimately resulted in us building a software platform that helps integrate data that organizations already have access to into one place, but critically locking that down, securing it, and providing the federal government with the tools to provide governance and auditability and interpretability on top of all of that information. The second half of that, which I think really gets to the second half of your question, is not just having information in one place so that we can create analytics and dashboards and run models, but actually really so that we can connect it to the decisions and the operations that an organization needs to run. And so that's,
Look, that's also a really important point, just to stop it there. It's not about creating analytics based on data. It's about how do those analytics translate to decisions that an entire organization, an entire hospital, an entire supply chain. Palantir partnered with Cardinal and Concordance. Concordance works with a lot of different supply chains in Cardinal in the New York City area. Like, how do all of those vendors and third-party decision makers make effective decisions to provide the right healthcare? And I think that's the real value of Palantir's healthcare approach, not just like a software that provides some analytics for a hospital.
Epidemiologists every day at the CDC, the researchers at the NIH, the supply chain experts on the ground at a number of commercial distributors, really having data at their fingertips to make the decisions that they need every day. And I love what Commissioner Killif said before this, which is we need to get back to the point where clinicians are spending the majority of their time focused on providing care rather than munging data and filling out forms, and that's where software, technology, AI needs to go. And so when I think about the future of healthcare, where Palantir's role is in all of this, helping really provide a centralizing force across this incredibly fragmented ecosystem without pretending to have a silver bullet and accepting that all data is going to be in one place, really prioritizing security and control and auditability has always been important, and we've seen how much that resonates in healthcare, but it's becoming incredibly, even more and more important as we think about bringing AI into these contexts and ensuring that interpretability, model readiness and bias checking, all of that is part of the way that AI factors into the decisions we're making. And so very concretely, I think we've seen that approach be incredibly relevant during COVID, from disease surveillance and getting a comprehensive view of everything happening at CDC and nationwide, to providing research infrastructure that's really patient-centric and gives tools to researchers across the country and prioritizes EHR interoperability, to supply chain forecasting and identifying potential shortages. But all of that is about not just seeing that data and having a common operating picture, but tying it to the decisions that you can make, the places you can allocate resources, the places we need to we need to make sure there is stock and supply, the places and the tools that we need to empower researchers with to really drive the next round of cancer insights. And so I think that ethos of connecting data and analytics and now AI to decisions and its operational context is more relevant than ever, because working backwards from those decision points is the only way we're going to be able to make sense of this fragmented ecosystem.
Seeing someone talk about this around healthcare, and we'll get back to the last 5 minutes of this, makes me really excited, right? Because healthcare is a very, very big market. It's a $4 trillion market, from what Shyam Sankar, the CTO of Palantir, said back in 2022. And he called Palantir the best startup in that healthcare space. Why are they the best startup? Because technology has historically not been infiltrated within the healthcare space as much as it should. There's been a lot of innovation in regards to like discovery technologies and I guess technologies on the actual surgical board, right? Making things that actually help you create surgery and cancer research, things of that nature. But when we're talking about AI being integrated into drug discovery, when we're talking about AI being integrated into operationalizing staffing schedules for nurses as per HCA Healthcare using Palantir, like this is a really big market. For anyone who's listening, this is not a small game that Palantir is playing with. And that's why you're not seeing the growth be crazy right now. It's because they're trying to methodically figure out how the hell do we attack this market? Because this is trillions of dollars. Palantir wants to be the most important software company in the world. Healthcare is one of the most important verticals in the world. There's a lot of opportunity here, and they have to be very strategic with how do they get into this market. And getting that NHS contract is one of the first parts of transforming an entire healthcare system for a country that can allow them to get a lot more contracts after you change the entire UK health system. So there's a lot that Palantir is doing here. And as a shareholder, you should be incredibly excited around the healthcare opportunities for Palantir.
So, we say you can't change what you can't measure, and Palantir is like the top of being able to measure things. How do people, in your experience, your customers, your agencies, how do they learn to act on data that they never had before? And how well are they doing at that?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, Greg, the majority of our engagement, so first of all, Palantir is not a data broker. We're not showing up at our engagements with various federal agencies, providing them data that they then have access to. I think what we have found is that at the majority of these agency partners and a number of our commercial partners, the data and a lot of the information is already there. And the ability to synthesize it and get it into one common format, location, and operational context, what we call the ontology, really provides unprecedented ability to make the decisions that are already being made just with a combination of PowerPoints and consultants and spreadsheets and dashboards, and really getting that built into software in a first-class way where the decisions operators are making every day is backed by the data the organization already has is really powerful and I think is doable. It's a matter of making use of what you already have rather than only prioritizing and discussing the things that you need to get access to.
What healthcare problem do you worry about the most, and what's the Palantir solution to that problem?
Great question. I think everything Judy said resonates. The fragmentation of the system is really scary and complex, and I think maybe the hardest part of that is it feels really intractable. A slightly different answer is that I think if we had wanted to author a playbook as a country for how to be like maybe a little bit tinfoil hat about how to like issue a bio threat against the United States, we couldn't have done a better job in the last 3.5 years.
Wow, I did not know he was going there. And that makes sense given Palantir is about security and protecting the West. I did not know he was going that route.
Our inability to collaborate, our inability to coordinate across all the different components of the private sector, the public sector, the payers, the providers, just getting our whole healthcare system into a single place where we could then respond effectively was very, very, very challenging. And so one of the things that concerns me is that healthcare is now a national security problem. I think that was made very clear, and I think there have been really tremendous and sort of laudable improvements in the way that the White House has launched, the Office of Pandemic Preparedness and Response. I think OSTP and the National Security Council are thinking about this more. But if we think about healthcare the way we think about national security, we need endpoint detection to know when potential biothreats are entering or exiting the country, particularly entering the country, which can take the form of wastewater surveillance. I think CDC is doing a lot of good work with the National Wastewater Surveillance System and the Traveler Genomic Sequencing Program. We need centralized infrastructure to be able to synthesize that information rapidly to drive potential action. And then I think we need a much more sophisticated doctrine on how the US partners with other countries to inform and respond to potential threats once they've entered our borders. And so I think a real doctrine of public health readiness and treating public health and our healthcare system as a national security problem is something I really believe is necessary. I think from a Palantir perspective, we fortunately have a lot of experience with national security and how to provide infrastructure that helps mitigate potential threats while really prioritizing privacy and security and appropriate audited handling of patient data or civilian data. And so I think that is something that I really want to see us continue to invest in, and that I think I would be really excited for Palantir to be a thought partner on shaping our approach to as a country.
All right. Not bad at all. I mean, the last thing he says about essentially the pandemic and how Palantir played a really pivotal role in coordinating a lot of people together. They had a good press, what was it? A keynote by one of the leaders in government that had to work with Palantir to figure out how to deal with the pandemic back in 2020. He gave a keynote a couple weeks ago on Palantir Software for Government conference, basically saying, look, the Palantir team, they just helped us, and we had no idea how to do anything, but we worked with the team, and the team helped us. They coordinated everything. They created a central ontology that allowed us to work together with all these different resources. They connected third-party vendors and payers and hospitals, administrations. You know, I don't want to say there's going to be another one of these types of global events that shock the entire world, but if you asked me in 2019, if you asked me in February of 2020 when I got the flu type B, okay, it was out for a good couple days, and then the next week I got the C word. I mean, even then, if you asked me, yo, do you think there's going to be a global pandemic after I went through all that in March 2020, I would have said, no, this isn't like, what's going to happen? You know, it's like, there's no way you can predict this stuff. When it happens, it happens. Palantir is built for that kind of crazy world where when things happen, and you have to act immediately. And it seems like what he's saying there is that Palantir's role in healthcare, not only from a biosecurity perspective, but from a general make drug discovery, hospitals more effective perspective, is now. And if they can capitalize on that, then there's going to be a lot of growth in just that vertical for Palantir, which is why, to me, it's the most important and interesting software company in the world. It's just that simple. This is the reason why it's fun to make videos every day on Palantir. They are the most interesting and important software company in the world, and I'm proud to be investing in them, and it's exciting to be along for the journey. Thank you guys for listening, watching. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know any things you want me to talk about in future episodes. Leave your comments below. I'll see you guys in the next one.